Hey, Jamie, how's it going? Good to see you too. I am doing well. I'm doing reasonably well. And if I'm not doing well, it's because I've done something that's self inflicted and it'll pass. How are you doing? How are you feeling? No, it's been a good day. Another really productive day. It's nice when you enjoy what you do and you've got a lot to do, basically. Given the choice, I would cut back on that a little bit and write some more, but we take what we can get. And right now, I'm actually feeling pretty okay, so I thought I'd start the stream while I still have some energy here. Don't want to waste it. Doing okay. Well, good. Good. Everything healing up okay? Yeah, the self-inflicted thing is I decided to stream late last night, so because I'm getting to the point where I'm treating writing like I used to treat gaming. Like if I'm going to do it, then I'm going to stream it a lot of the time. Most of the time right now, if I'm writing, I'm streaming. And I started late. I didn't even do that many sprints, and I didn't do anything extra, and I still didn't get to bed until between 5, 6 a.m., which means I got about an hour's sleep last night. And I'm surprisingly coherent. Well, I feel surprisingly coherent. We'll find out if I'm actually if I'm coherent when I actually try to start reading stuff. Good, glad to hear it. That's good. So I think how this is going to work is from now on is this channel's. I've talked about this a lot, but we'll just kind of make it official. This is now going to be all reading and writing. It's all books and writing, fiction, literature. That's not to say I'm going to stop streaming games. Games are going back on 1010 Noggin. Just so I can keep things nice and separated, because I ran into a situation the other night. Not a bad one, just something I didn't expect. You just tired? Yeah, tell me about it. I know the feeling. Life right now is so full of tired. It's a weird thing. I mean, so we're going to the annual local Comic-Con. It's called Rose City Comic-Con in Portland, Oregon. It's coming up in a little over a week here. And I'll admit, I'm dreading it. Like, it's our family vacation. It should be fun. We haven't been able to go for the last, 3 years or something. And, because of COVID and other things. And, yeah, I'm just dreading being out and around crowds. Like, I've turned slightly agoraphobic over the last couple of years. Which I was maybe leaning that way anyway. And I use that term casually. I don't mean I've developed an actual fear of it, but yeah, it's no fun. I've got a bunch of good stuff coming up here, and a couple of the things, yeah, I'm just kind of dreading. Everything feels like an obligation or pressure. Oh well, not to be too negative, I'm just saying, like I'm saying that because I think I'm probably not alone. I think a lot of people feel that way these days. But anyway, yeah, so up late last night. Slept a little in the middle of the day, so I ended up working late, but it all kind of balances out. And so you hate being in crowds because you never like being around people a lot. Yeah, same. The thing about Comic-Con for us is that it's been a good crowd. It's been like you're among all these people who... Everyone is really into something there. It's the cosplay, it's the people from the shows and movies you liked, which is just kind of fun on its own. It's even just wandering around, looking at the vendors and chatting with people, finding other people who are into the stuff that you're into. It's a good crowd, you know. It's like really, really good vibes. A lot of people will balk at my saying this, but I was sitting there one year and I'm like, this is what a church service should feel like. Acceptance and mutuality and all these really good things and this really positive, energetic vibe. I think it is very much like church for a lot of people. But anyway, it is fun. So we'll have fun. It'll be good. It's just between now and then, the getting everything ready and getting there and all that is just going to be a little bit of a chore. But I'll get over it. We'll have fun. This year, who have we got coming? We've got a lot of people. Let me go look. In terms of comic book artists, we have some really cool folks coming too. Am I going to dress up? No, I don't do the cosplay. I wouldn't mind. I'm just not good at it, and I don't have the time to invest. Like, I would love to do something like a Big Daddy from BioShock. I thought about doing Mr. Freeze, because I've kind of got the head for it. Like, all I'd have to do is shave my head a little bit more, and I've got that. And I think I've got the kind of, I don't know, the facial features. Like, I could probably pull it off. But yeah, I just don't have the wherewithal to get the costume ready. Let's see who we got coming. Page is taking forever to load. Yeah, from Batman. Did I call him something else? I wouldn't. That remember I was talking about how it's like, well, I feel coherent, but we'll see. We got Billy D. Williams from Star Wars. We got looking. Some people who other people will probably know that I just don't know that well. Giancarlo Esposito from Breaking Bad and many other things. From Do the Right Thing. It's the first movie I ever saw him in, I think. Jim Lee, comic book artist. Amazing. Yeah, really, really accomplished, well-known comic book artist. I think I know his name. I don't recognize him. I'm going to say Ross Marquand from The Walking Dead, among other things. Sean Astin. That's what I was trying to remember. I thought Sean Astin was coming, but I couldn't remember, from The Lord of the Rings and Stranger Things and all that. Anthony Rapp, who's on one of the new Star Trek shows. I like his character. So yeah, should be fun. Should be some good panels. All right. Well, in the interest of time and energy, this could fade. I could go over an energy cliff at any time, so why don't we go ahead and get going. Doing some reading today. Oh, and so, book I've talked about before, White Noise by Don DeLillo. It turns out that they have made White Noise into a movie that is going to be on Netflix. Adam Driver plays the lead. It looks really cool. I'm really curious to see how they're going to turn that particular book into a movie, like what they're going to focus on, because it's not really plot heavy, you know. Never watched Batman, never really been into superheroes. Yeah, Batman is one of the few superhero things I kind of like, and even then I haven't read like a ton of the comics or anything. I like some of the films. I've got some of the classic comics, not classic really, but some of the better known ones. But yeah. As superhero things go, he's one of my favorites. The Batman I like the best is the most recent one, where he was the most down to earth, far less, like far less spectacle and a lot more quiet, sort of meditative, ponderous, and dark, and that's my vibe. So I really enjoyed it. It was a good one. But yeah, so White Noise turning into a film should be really good. So it's like the first chapter of White Noise is almost half the book, and it's describing this guy kind of going about his life, who's a professor at a college, teaches a weird subject that he kind of made up, and it's him and his 4 kids from like 4 combined different marriages between him and his wife. It's just, it's one of those things. I could try to describe it and I would fail, and you just kind of gotta read it. So I'm going to be very curious to see what they do on film. Don't care if I'll like it or not. It'll just be fun to see someone's interpretation of it, to see what they do with it in terms of a screenplay. And I like Adam Driver, so that should be fun. All right. Why don't we get reading? I'll do this one since it's the first one up and it doesn't look familiar. After this, so it turns out that there's a genre selector in here. So maybe we'll play around with genre a little bit. I picked young adult last time. Oh, so yeah, let's talk about that. So I was trying to read the beginning to White Noise, and there's nothing racy in the first chapter at all. There's nothing very I wouldn't say even controversial or anything, but it does talk about how the main character is the head of the Department of Hitler Studies. And Hitler Studies is a field that he made up in like 1969 to sort of just carve out his corner of academia. And it just felt weird. So we had some young folks on the stream, around 13 to 15 years old. And again, not especially impressionable at that age necessarily. It just, I don't know. I couldn't remember everything that was in it. It didn't feel quite right. And the folks who showed up there, well, which they're welcome. The people who come, if younger people come, you're absolutely welcome to hang out by all means. It wasn't so much just the content in the book. It was, I kind of drew in some of these folks into the audience through playing games. And now I'm doing the switcheroo because I can't make up my mind. And I'm just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, right? I just felt like, I don't know, like maybe I'd worry about that stuff too much maybe, but it just felt kind of odd. So I think better to kind of clearly delineate what goes on what channel. This was what I had intended to do pretty much the whole time with this one. It's just I had no idea how to start it. I had no idea what I wanted to do on stream, and it's taken this long to kind of figure out a few things. But I do occasionally still like playing games. There's a game coming out next week that I've been waiting for a long time. I'm hoping to get the day off when it releases so I can just like literally spend almost a whole day streaming. That remains to be seen. I put in the request tonight. I've delayed it too long because I've been so busy with stuff that I'm worried now that they might say no, but we'll see. Anyway, so yeah, and it'll be fun to dust off 10 ton and maybe start working back towards using the little animated face, like getting a much better polished version of the model, getting some better hardware for face tracking, that kind of thing. So met me when you're 16, you think? You don't mind. You stuck around long enough. Yeah. Wow, it's funny to think that it's been that long. Yeah, I remember some of our first conversations, actually. They stood out in my mind. Yeah. I have this thing. I don't know. It's chalked it up to, it's just how, we each have these sort of areas that certain things happen, and sometimes people get trained to worry about everything, to worry about letting people down, to worry about, and that happens. And it's such an integral part of me that I can't, a lot of people at work and otherwise will be like, no, it's cool, don't worry, you worry too much about it. And it's like, you don't understand. it's not mental and it's not a choice. It's physiological. There's like when I go through here's a good example. Like I'm aware of this thing. It doesn't actually like cause it doesn't like hurt me in any way, but it's still like I see it. I can see it objectively, and it's kind of weird where I'll go through a drive-through to pick up a coffee. And the simple act of talking to someone will make me so tense that I have to make sure I like take a deep breath and just talk to them like a person and not worry about what they're thinking about me. And most of the time, if I look, like I'll realize at some point that I'm pushing down on the brake so hard, like I'm trying to push the pedal through the floor. I get so tense. It's weird. It's kind of stupid in my mind. Like I'm in my 50s now, and growing up for me, I thought it was going to mean ditching all those reactions someday. They're still here. Even though the rational, conscientious part of my brain knows that it's silly and doesn't really react like I did when I was a kid, it is still there. You know, it would take a lot of work to completely unwire that kind of thing. So, yeah, I kind of wonder if, there are certain things, the reason that we get along as we do is because there are some similarities along those lines, But, and the other thing too is I guess I don't resent it too much, other than the times that it causes me to act stupid or to kind of, like trip over myself. Actually being hyper aware of and concerned about other people is not such a bad thing, so long as you can temper it so that what you're seeing is accurate, not self-sacrificing in a damaging sort of way, but like just being aware of other people is not such a bad thing, right? It's nice to be considerate, especially in this sort of world. There aren't that many, sometimes it feels like there aren't that many people like that. One of my heroes growing up was Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers. And as an adult, I went back and looked at his work during a really difficult time, and it was really comforting to look at and kind of see how he treated people and how people responded to him. And he had such a way with people where he would intentionally do that. He would make, I don't know how many people I've heard to say that when they met him, that there was this sense that he made everything was about them. He was so considerate and so giving and open with people that they felt like immediately, like he was sincere and compassionate. And how awesome is that? And the thing is, I think a lot of people assume that kind of attitude is easy. And it is not. It is something that takes a lot of skill and reflection and insight and patience and self-training, and he just mastered it, So if I could take that aspect of myself and turn it into something like that, I think I'd be pretty content with that aspect of things. You've grown the dislike of having strangers standing behind you for some reason. You get so anxious. Yeah. I know. For me personally, I know some other people like that too, and I think different people have different sort of things that start to kind of itch in their brain when that's going on. And the one for me, because of stuff growing up, was this sense that I'm either in the way, doing something stupid without even if I'm just standing in a checkout line or something, or that I just get this like spidey sense that there's something wrong with what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like it's the old, my shoes are untied, my fly is down, I forgot pants today sort of thing. That the last one is not really a thing, but yeah. I think a lot of us have been messed up in that way, and so it's big realization for me along those lines is that it isn't just a mental thing. It isn't just conditioning yourself mentally to somehow think different when you're in those situations. That doesn't work. There's so much of this that is physiological. It is part of hardwiring neural pathways that are very deeply set. I've seen some things on some therapy that actually helps deal with these sorts of things. I don't think they quite understand how it works, but it has to do with eye movement, oddly enough. But they've actually used it to treat people with PTSD and eliminating some of those negative behaviors that come from that. And I'm really fascinated by that idea, because there are a couple things I would love to be able to do to kind of reset things, just to align what I've learned over the many years I've been around with how my body and my physical brain want me to react in different situations. So, but anyway, it's why whenever I thank people for being here, Jamie, you, and we've had a lot of great people on the channel lately. When I seem to gush a little bit and I'm like, thanks for being here and all that, and I'm, thanking people for being gracious, I tell you, it's sincere. Because when people make me, do what they do to make me feel comfortable and all that, I see it as a real gift. It's a real act of grace. So it's appreciated. In your school, people would pee on their hands and then try to high five you or shake your hand. Yep. There's that. There was, being on the school bus, I wore this really big black jacket. I was like, I was that guy. I was the one who never talked and, kind of hid inside his clothes, and a big guy compared to everyone else. Not necessarily tall, but big. And there are things like, people would just like very quietly spit in my hood, over and over again. People are people. I'm not going to go over all the stories because I don't want to dig in and think about that stuff. But that's just the first thing off the stack. You know what I mean? People can really suck. All right. Well, switching gears a little bit here, for myself anyway. We can keep talking about stuff as I go along here, but I'm going to get some reading done too. All right, no idea what this is, just looking at the first sentence, other than that there's a nonfiction book about men being from Mars and women being from Venus, but I don't think this is that. Imagine that men are from Mars and women are from Venus. One day long ago, the Martians, looking through their telescopes, discovered the Venusians. Just glimpsing the Venusians awakened feelings they had never known. They fell in love and quickly invented space travel and flew to Venus. The Venusians welcomed the Martians with open arms. They had intuitively known that this day would come. Their hearts opened wide to a love they had never felt before. The love between the Venusians and Martians was magical. They delighted in being together, doing things together, and sharing together. Though from different worlds, they reveled in their differences. They spent months learning about each other, exploring and appreciating their different needs, preferences, and behavior patterns. For years, they lived together in love and harmony. When they decided to fly to Earth, then they decided to fly to Earth. In the beginning, everything was wonderful and beautiful, but the effects of Earth's atmosphere took hold, and one morning everyone woke up with a peculiar kind of amnesia, selective amnesia. Both the Martians and Venusians forgot that they were from different planets, and we're supposed to be... This is that book. We're supposed to be different. In one morning, everything they had learned about their differences was erased from their memory, and since that day, men and women had been in conflict. I've never read this. I did not know they did this kind of like self-help stuff on this site. I need to figure out how to filter this out. Oh, they need a fiction-nonfiction switch on this thing. Let's see. Without the awareness that we're supposed to... Let's just keep reading. This is sort of a self-help classic anyway. Without the awareness that we are supposed to be different, men and women are at odds with each other. We usually become angry or frustrated with the opposite sex because we have forgotten this important truth. We expect the opposite sex to be more like ourselves. We desire them to want what we want and feel the way we feel. We mistakenly assume that if our partners love us, they will react and behave in certain ways. The ways we react and behave when we love someone. This attitude sets us up to be disappointed again and again and prevents us from taking the necessary time to communicate lovingly about our differences. We mistakenly assume that if our partners love us, they will react and behave in certain ways, the ways we react and behave when we love someone. Men mistakenly expect women to think, communicate, and react the way men do. Women mistakenly expect men to feel, communicate, and respond the way women do. We have forgotten that men and women are supposed to be different. As a result, our relationships are filled with unnecessary friction and conflict. And this is Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus by John Gray. I don't know about you. This one, to me, says something about the sort of self-oriented mindset of, especially of the 80s, 70s and 80s when this came out. I don't know when it was originally published. But it's funny. I don't think any of this has been true in my life. This idea of expecting people to be, it's funny that we were just talking about self-reflective things because now we got this. Yeah, I never expected other people to behave the way I did. But I mean, part of that was because of the problem we were talking about. Jamie, you may, I don't know, maybe you're like this too, where it's like, I'm so convinced deep inside that I'm doing something wrong, that I'm going to assume that other people's norms are the correct norms and that I need to get in line, which is not good either. Like, you got to find a middle ground, right? But at the same time, that attitude, seeing that in yourself and being aware of it, and then entering into relationships, it's not such a terrible thing. This idea of recognizing that there are other people who behave different ways, not just based on whether you're, men or women or, I am curious about this book, given today's, all the new views on gender and everything, if they've revised this book at all. Like, serious question. Because it takes some views that I think a lot of people would find outdated or problematic. Whether you agree or not doesn't matter. Anyway, I'm curious. But yeah, that one's not going on my shelf. No thank you. And neither is this song. Let me go take care of that. It's not terrible, it's just not quite my thing. What do we got now? Some slight, like, bossa nova guitar. Yeah, it'll do. Yeah. Bossa nova's good. This is like bossa nova light, but that's okay. All right, let's do the genre thing. You said horror earlier. Let's do that. I just wish people acted the way you do. Don't try to inconvenience others. Yeah. It can be tough to reach that middle ground. But I think the middle ground is important. Mutual grace and acceptance, to me, should be the thing. And so often what ends up happening is either what this book was describing, assuming that you're at the center and everyone else is a deviant to one degree or another, or assuming that you're the deviant and that you always have to change yourself. You have to be a chameleon and be like whoever you're around. Neither of those things are good in their extremes, of course. But it's very difficult to find two people who are looking for that middle. But boy, when you do, it's awesome. Okay. So we're doing horror now. See how this goes. This is some good music for horror. Let me see if I can find something fun for this. I think they had one called Spooky. I've never listened to it. There might not be anything on it because I have the YouTube switch turned on. Spooky, eerie ambience and creepy vibes. Play all tracks. Okay, here we go. Deep cleansing breath. All right. When Alice Hyland woke, She knew that a new year had begun. No matter... Pardon. No matter that it was April instead of January, to her mind, a new year meant new life. And she knew that daffodils would be pushing green shoots up through the cold, dark earth. And the sun would be shining over the top of New Millerdam Wood. Nice Resident Evil save room sounding music. Nice. And she knew that daffodils would be pushing green shoots up at the cold, dark earth, and the sun would be shining over the top of New Millerdam Wood. She knew this because her bedroom was full of birdsong, so clear and insistent that she couldn't bring herself to resent the fact that it had awakened her. She stretched as she crossed the room, her footsteps silent on the soft gray carpet, and pulled back the curtains, revealing the bright morning light. Alice closed her eyes and pictured the bird singing so hard that its heart might burst. She smiled at herself and opened her eyes again, and as she did, her smile widened. She had expected something nondescript, a gray-brown little thing, feathers. Did this not pick this is not... Did it not pick it yet, or is this meant to be an ironic beginning? I'm going to keep reading. I have no idea. Anyway. Expecting them to break out in song and dance here. She smiled at herself and opened her eyes again, and as she did, her smile widened. She had expected something nondescript, a gray-brown little thing, feathers fluffed against the early morning cold. Instead, the bird, sitting on a branch of the just budding apple tree in the center of Alice's garden, was so bright as to be almost iridescent. Its head pale turquoise, its body darkening to the color of the sky in summertime Greece. It was impossible. Its beak was open, and the notes came tumbling through the air towards Alice, a song of joy and life and irrepressible there-ness. She blinked. It didn't look like a budgerigar escaped from some cage, or a blue jay, or anything else she'd ever heard of. She'd seen a kingfisher once. Remember the brilliant blue flash as it half flew, half fell toward the water. Alice had thought it was falling, but the bird had brushed the surface of the river and fluttered upwards onto a branch, revealing its rust-orange breast. This bird had no such coloring. It was much smaller than a jay, even smaller than a kingfisher. It was blue from head to foot, suddenly, undeniably blue. This is not... I don't know, man. The bluebird. It was like something brought to life from a fairy tale, singing out its heart in her garden, like a good omen. She'd not covered, French, le sol bleu in her lectures for some time, had been concentrating on the basics, Snow White, Cinderella, Little Red, stories her students were familiar with. Maybe it should be back on the syllabus. As Alice pushed open the window, she saw the bird. It was truly beautiful. Cool air came in, and Alice thought she smelled springtime in it. L'Oiseau Bleu was a fairy tale from the turn of the 17th century, and the bird was Prince Charming in disguise. "Sing on, sweet prince," she whispered under her breath. It feels, doesn't it? Which I kind of like. Here's the thing: even if the site didn't pick the right genre and we're reading something else, I like reading this one with this music playing. I think it's a good. It's like a good contrast. Gives a whole new perspective on it. "Sing on, sweet prince," she whispered under her breath, and wondered what her students would think. They could see her now, just roused from sleep, leaning out of a window and talking to a bird, her pale hair tangled about her face. She should go inside, and yet the bluebird was looking at her, its tiny, water-bright eyes fixed and staring. She almost didn't like it. Birds didn't stare like that, did they? A bird of prey, perhaps, spying its next meal, not this small, timid thing. I hate sound effects in text. Chirr, chirr, chirr. The shrilled rhythm repeated over and over, evolving as Alice listened. Now sounding almost like words, then whistles that rose to an unpleasant squeak, and then a series of pulses like an insect might make. Chur. Alice broke her gaze and caught hold of the window catch. She should take a shower, get dressed, start all the normal, everyday things. Maybe she'd rummage through her source text, find the tale about the bluebird who transforms into a man. And she looked up to see the bird coming at her in a flurry of feathers and beak and claws. She gasped, started back, and slammed the window closed in time to see the bird pull up short on the other side. Now, here we go. Here we go. Pull up short on the other side. For a moment, she saw each individual wing feather spread wide, the finer, darker feathers delineated on its breast, and she braced herself for the dull sound of fragile bones breaking against glass. It did not come. There was only silence, the room strangely empty without that high, relentless bird song. Alice straightened, brushing strands of hair from her face, peering through the window. She couldn't see the bird anywhere. As she bent closer, the top of her head met the glass, and the sound, though small, made her jump. There was now nothing in the tree, nothing on the ground, and now that the bird had gone, it felt like it could not have been, that she had never seen it at all. Then she saw it had left something for her, a little piece of blue lying on the windowsill. She opened the window again and looked about in case the bird should return. But this time there was no movement. Only the soft... Is that sow or suff? Sow? It's no... Of the wind playing through the branches in the woodland beyond. The breeze didn't penetrate her garden. The leaves of the apple tree did not stir. Alice reached out and picked up the feather. It was small but beautifully formed, and the blue was a little paler from somewhere high in the bird's body. Holding it carefully by the quill, she examined it. It felt like a gift, a benediction, a glimpse of something at once impossible and undeniably real, and as blue as the sky in springtime. No idea what this is. I think you're saying like it's the start of the birds is like the best bet of is better than anything I could come up with. It's not that the bird turned into a guy necessarily, but she's talking about the story where it did, and maybe it did because it kind of disappeared. What do we got? Path of Needles. So it is a horror novel. It just starts out like, we start out in a Disney flick, and then one of the birds goes rogue, I guess. Interesting. Yeah, this is kind of fun. I have to admit, I was a little, again, over-worried, but I was a little worried that what we were reading there was going to turn out to be some kind of, like, a story of some quiet little birder living their life looking out the window. Hey, how's it going? Hey, congratulations, that's awesome. Sweet. So you have what like an ending that satisfies you? You know what you're going to do with it? You don't know if the ending is any good. Well, so long as you have, I tell you what, if you have a direction to follow on the compass, it's about all you need. You'll figure it out by the time you get there. Congratulations, though. That's awesome. Let's see. His code name was The Needle. He was a German aristocrat of extraordinary intelligence. Oh, this is not the same book. It jumped to the wrong one. Shame on them. Path of Needles by Alison Littlewood. Boy, if I were using your site to advertise my book, I'd be a little ticked. That looks more like the right thing. Raised in Penistone, South Yorkshire, went on to attend the university, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm looking for info on the book itself. Where's the book description? Book details. Nothing. Okay. Good luck. Alright, let's do another one. A romantic book about the lady falling in love with the bluebird. Exactly, it's what it sounds like at first, right? Let's see. Finish your summary outline. I don't know if the ending's any good. I don't know how you know. You don't know how I know? I don't follow. I got lost. Okay. Let's get started here. Okay. Your room had long ago plunged into near complete darkness, leaving no distraction from the great rocking thump, thump, thump of body after body flinging itself onto the great mass already coating the hall. There was nothing to see. The shutters were down, but you could feel the terrible vibration, hear the groan of chitin on the metal, the cataclysmic rending of steel by fungus claw. Fungus? Fungus. It was very cold. A fine shimmer of frost now coated your cheeks, your hair, your eyelashes. In that smothering dark, your breath emerged as wisps of wet gray smoke. Sometimes you screamed a little, which no longer embarrassed you. Sorry. You understood your body's reaction to the proximity. Screaming was the least of what might happen. God's voice came very calmly over the calm. 10 minutes until breach. You've got half an hour of aircon left. After that, you'll be working in the oven. Doors down until the pressure equalizes. Conserve your temp. Conserve your temp, everyone. Harrow, I'm leaving yours closed as long as possible. You staggered to your feet. Limpid skirts gathered in both hands, and picked your way over the comm button. Standing for something damning and intellectual to say, you snapped, I can take care of myself. Harrowwart, we need you in the river, and while you are in the river, your necromancy will not work. I am a lictor, Lord, you heard yourself say. I am your saint. I am your fingers and gestures. If you wanted a hand who needed a door to hide behind, even now, then I have misjudged you. From his far-off sanctum deep within the Mithraeum, I think it's supposed to be Mithraeum, but this is pronounced E, not A. Within the Mithraeum, you heard him exhale. You imagined him sitting in his patchy, worn-out chair all alone, worrying his right temple with the thumb he always worried his right temple with. After a brief pause, he said, Harrow, please don't be in such a hurry to die. Do not underestimate me, teacher, you said. I have always lived. You picked your way back through the concentric rings of ground acetabulum you had laid, the fine gritty layers of femur, and you stood in the center and breathed. Deep through the nose, out the mouth, just as you had been taught. The frost was already resolving into a fine dew, misting your face and the back of your neck, and you were hot inside your robes. You sat down with your legs crossed and your hands laid helplessly in your lap. The basket hilt of the rapier nudged into your hip, like an animal that wanted something, and in a sudden fit of temper, you considered unbuckling the damn thing and hurling it as hard as you possibly could to the other side of the room. Only you worried how pitifully short it would fall. Outside, the hull shuddered, as a few hundred heralds more assembled on its surface. You imagined them crawling over each other, blue in the shadow of the asteroids, yellow in the light of the nearest star. Okay, I'll just say plainly, yeah, not a fan. I think this is poorly written prose. It is a little bit full of itself. It wants very much for us to be excited about whatever it's about, and Like this, God's voice came very calmly over the comm. It's less mysterious or engaging as it is, I don't know. It reads to me as a little pompous. I would plop this one back on the shelf very quickly. Don't mean to sound harsh. This is, I'm going to find things on here now and then, maybe even often, that I just don't like. I look for something, try to differentiate between what I see as more objectively like poorly constructed things and things that are just a matter of taste. To me, this is not just a matter of taste. This is just poorly written. Here we go. I've said all the terrible things. What do we got? Tamsin Muir, Harrow the Ninth. Is this the one I've heard so much about? Where people this is one of those that people either just absolutely love it and go doodly over it, or they think it's a big old waste of time. I'm going to look up some things. Yeah, it's a sequel to Gideon the Ninth. That's the one I'm thinking about. No kidding. It's got a 4.5 rating on Amazon. Oh, thank you for checking. Yeah, no, I heard about this on the book Reddit, basically, the subreddit. And not this one in particular, but Gideon the Ninth. And it was someone looking for a recommendation for, I can't remember exactly what it was, some kind of horror novel. And they recommended Gideon the Ninth as some kind of sort of extreme woo-woo, I don't know what else may make it controversial or sort of shocking to some people. But yeah, I would not have gotten past the first paragraphs. Diddle bird. Yeah. So one of the first things that's difficult to read is there are two different possible narrative perspectives that they're using here. One of them is using second person, which is really rare, and it's kind of rare for a reason. It's difficult to pull off well. So first person is first person past tense. First past, I did this, I did that. Third person past, he, she, it did this, he, she, it did that. Second person is kind of like role playing. It's the voice that the DM would use in a role playing game. You do this, you see this, where there's a you cross that line of participation. You kind of you're putting the reader, the audience, as the subject in the narrative, and that's why it works with role playing, is because that's expected, and it's a back and forth, right? In a purely like a fixed narrative, though, it just comes off a little weird. There's another possibility. There's another way to interpret this, and it's kind of like if I were telling you about, say, I'll just make something up here. Like, say a time I spent in a really bad storm in Alaska, and I was like, oh my gosh, it was awful. So right now I'm in first person past tense. Like, I had to run to the winds had picked up, and I had to run to the store and run inside or risk like losing my ears to the cold. It was so bad. Let's see how to say that. Like, you could actually feel your ears like starting to crack if you stayed out in the wind too long. So notice that I used you could feel this, you could that, but it doesn't actually change the perspective of the story, right? It's just I'm using a rhetorical you to bring you into the narrative and kind of say, like, had you been there, you would experience this thing. I can't tell from this. This seems like it's second person. Your room had long ago plunged into near complete darkness, leaving no distraction from the great rocking thump 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 of body after body, etc. It was very cold. A fine shimmer of frost now coated your cheeks. It's absolutely second person. So it's a bold choice anyway for perspective, because it's, again, very difficult to get it right, because you're telling people, like, where's a good example here? You staggered to your feet, limpid skirts gathered in both hands. I was very tempted to make a joke about how, like, I don't own any skirts, certainly not limpid ones. You snapped, I can take care of myself. You're really counting on a close narrative distance. In other words, that you are so in the story that you will accept that when they say, here's what you say, or here's what you said, you're kind of into it. You're like, yeah, and you're along for the ride, and it's cool that you're in the seat the way they've tried to do here. This just doesn't do that. Again, maybe there's so many works these days that really require you to already be in love with them when you walk through the door to really enjoy them. And this strikes me as exactly that. And I'll tell you, I'm just not. I just, the language, the names, it strikes me as silly. So I beat that one up enough. And like I said, Gideon the Ninth, deft, tense, and atmospheric, compellingly immersive, and wildly original. After rocking the cosmos with her deathly debut, Tamsin Muir continues the story of the penumbral ninth house in Harrow the Ninth, a mind-twisting puzzle box of mystery, murder, magic, and mayhem, and alliteration. Nothing is as it seems in the halls of the Emperor, and the fate of the galaxy rests on one woman's shoulders. I mean, already, like, universal states, I'm just not into anymore. I'm not. I'm much more interested in what will happen to this one person. Will they make the right choice? Will they not? Will they actually, like, it's funny. I don't know if this is just a consequence of age, or largely a consequence of age, or it's something, that, I don't know. But yeah, I want a story that talks about whether or not two people will figure out if they can actually relate to one another, It doesn't even have to be a romance or something. It can just be, are they going to be able to make sense of these things? How are they going to react to this? How are they going to process all this? So the idea that the stories that start off with, the fate of the universe rested on this one person, I'm already like, not my thing. Have fun. I'll be over here in the corner, like, reading books about, quiet moments and feelings and inner thoughts. All right. So not a fan. Let's move on. All right. Let me take another drink here. I mean, hey, I'm glad it came up because, like I said, I'd kind of heard of it. Problem you have with the Universal States is that they can't lose. Yeah, exactly, right? It's like you either know there's no sequel or they're going to figure it out somehow. So, yeah. Okay. October 4th. Excuse me. October 4th, 1957. And an invitation to dance. For me, the terror, the real terror, as opposed to whatever demons and bogies which might have been living in my own mind, began on an afternoon in October of 1957. I had just turned 10, and as was only fitting, I was in a movie theater, the Stratford Theater in downtown Stratford, Connecticut. The movie that day was and is one of my all-time favorites, and the fact that it, rather than a Randolph Scott Western or John Wayne war movie, was playing was also only fitting. The Saturday matinee on that day when the real terror began was Earth versus the Flying Saucers, starring Hugh Marlowe, who at the time was perhaps best known for his role as Patricia Neal's jilted and rapidly xenophobic boyfriend in The Day the Earth Stood Still, a slightly older and altogether more rational science fiction movie. The Day the Earth Stood Still, an alien named Klaatu, Michael Rennie in a bright white intergalactic leisure suit, lands on the mall in Washington, D.C. in a flying saucer which, when underpowered, glows like one of those plastic Jesuses they used to give out at Vacation Bible School for memorizing Bible verses. I missed something, apparently. Klaatu strides down the gangway and pauses there at the foot, the focus of every horrified eye in the muzzles of several hundred army guns. It is a moment of memorable tension, a moment that is sweet in retrospect, the sort of moment that makes people like me simple movie fans for life. Klaatu begins fooling with some sort of gadget. It looked kind of like a weed eater, as I recall, and a trigger-happy soldier boy promptly shoots him in the arm. It turns out, of course, that the gadget was a gift for the president. No death ray here, just a simple star-to-star communicator. That was in 1951. On that Saturday afternoon in Connecticut, some 6 years later, the folks in the flying saucers looked and acted a good deal less friendly. Far from the noble and rather sad good looks of Michael Rennie as Klaatu, the space people in Earth versus the Flying Saucers looked like old and extremely evil living trees, with their gnarled, shriveled bodies and their snarling old men's faces. Rather than bringing a communicator to the president like any new ambassador bringing a token of his country's esteem, the saucer people in Earth versus the Flying Saucers bring death rays, destruction, and ultimately all-out war. All of this, most particularly the destruction of Washington, D.C., was rendered with marvelous reality by the special effects work of Ray Harryhausen, a fellow who used to go to the movies with a chum named Ray Bradbury when he was a kid. Klaatu comes to extend the hand of friendship and brotherhood. He offers the people of Earth membership in a kind of interstellar United Nations, always provided we can put our unfortunate habit of killing each other by the millions behind us. The Saucerians of Earth versus the Flying Saucers come only to conquer, the last armada of a dying planet, old and greedy, seeking not peace but plunder. The Day the Earth Stood Still is one of a select handful of the real science fiction movies. The ancient Saucerians of Earth versus the Flying Saucers are emissaries of a much more common breed of film, the horror show. No nonsense about it was to be a gift for your president here. These folks simply descend upon Hugh Marlowe's project Skyhook at Cape Canaveral and begin kicking ass. It is in the space between these two philosophies that the terror was seeded, I think. If there's a line of force between such neatly opposing ideas, then the terror almost certainly grew there. Because just as the saucers were mounting their attack on our nation's capital in the movie's final reel, everything just stopped. The screen went black. The theater was full of kids, but there was remarkably little disturbance. If you think back to the Saturday matinees of your misspent youth, you may recall that a bunch of kids at the movies has any number of ways of expressing its pique at the interruption of the film, or its overdue commencement. Rhythmic clapping, that great childhood tribal chant of "We want the show, we want the show." Candy boxes that fly at the screen, popcorn boxes that become bugles. If some kid had a Black Cat firecracker in his pocket since the last 4th of July, he will take this opportunity to remove it, pass it around to his friends for their approval and admiration, and then light it and toss it over the balcony. None of these things happened on that October day. The film hadn't broken, the projector had simply been turned off. And then the house lights began to come up. A totally unheard of occurrence. We sat there looking around, blinking in the light like moles. The manager walked out into the middle of the stage and held his hands up, quite unnecessarily, for quiet. 6 years later, in 1963, I flashed on that moment when one Friday afternoon in November, the guy who drove us home from school told us that the president had been shot in Dallas. Okay, no kidding. Oh, I missed it. Interesting. So I've read some Stephen King. I did not pick up his style in this. This is, I think, a little bit of a cheat for this genre. Let's see. Yeah, this is not like a horror novel. This is a book on pop culture. Okay. What? I don't know. That's a little taken aback. Yeah, so I'm looking for anything that categorizes this. I think this is nonfiction. I've heard of it. Looking at the book info, English. I guess, yeah, they don't categorize things the same way. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Let's get on to another one. See, honestly, let's see, not sure what I think, but you zoned out so hard listening to this. Yeah, it was a little repetitive for me. I know what he's building towards here, but he's doing this compare and contrast between the two films, and so he keeps going back and forth. It feels a little drawn out to me. Stephen King has a particularly fine sense of the words terror and horror. Yeah. You recognize terror as the finest emotion, and so you will try to terrorize the reader, but if you find that you cannot terrify, you'll try to horrify. If I find that I cannot horrify, I'll go for the gross out. I'm not proud. It's one of his famous quotes. Nice. That's cool. Slow but satisfying, in your opinion. Yeah. Yeah, I've had mixed experience with Stephen King. There's been some of his short stories, again, that I really enjoyed. I have a copy of The Shining on my to-read list. It is actually first edition paperback. The reason I got that one wasn't just to have a first edition of a book. It's because it's the one that I would go and look at in our little tiny, Nowheresville little market that served as, the local grocery store, and also I think not really pharmacy, but they had, first aid stuff, and they had, it was the only store within a otherwise long driving distance where I grew up. And my sister, who's older than me, had read it or was in the process of reading it. And she would describe some of the things that were going on in the story, and I had heard about in The Shining, the elevator opening and the blood rushing out, or the little girls standing in the hallway. And this imagery just creeped me out in the best way, the most enjoyable way. And so I would go in, and I knew I couldn't read the book. My parents wouldn't let me read it. Probably would have scared me out of my mind. And there's other stuff in it, too. I was probably only about 7, 8 years old at the time. Maybe that. But I remember going in and just staring at that cover, and it's one that has a silvered background with a person's head on the cover, but no face. The face is just blank. And it just complimented the whole thing. It just scared the crud out of me. Anyway, got a copy of that. I've read part of it. I've enjoyed it. I've also read, I read It a long time ago. Read it pretty quickly, so I don't think I really got out of it what I could have otherwise. Parts of it scared the crud out of me. But then recently, reading From a Buick 8, I was not impressed at all. Speaking of that repetition, it felt like there were a couple things, he was being trying very hard to make sure we were properly grossed out by something that had happened. Just the way he kept describing it from different angles throughout the whole book. It's I get it. It was awful. Something, move on, man. It also felt like the end in that book kind of cheated with the message. So much of the message in the book is we don't get to know why certain things happen or where these bad things come from. And then we get a glimpse of where they come from in the end. It's well, all right, whatever. So yeah, I liked his writing. I read his book on writing, which is really, really good. Highly recommended. This one I'm not sure I would be as interested in reading. Let's see. Sorry, missed some of your comments here. So you liked Into the Tall Grass on Netflix, even though it was very sloppy. I don't remember that one. Just lured in and bam, gone forever. I haven't read many Stephen King books, just Cujo, actually. Oh, okay. Stephen King doesn't remember writing Cujo. Yeah, I've heard that. Yep. He had some problems for a while. I hope he is well now. He had some, some habits for a while there. Okay, next book. Oh boy. After a rollicking start here. You ever seen a clan march? We don't have them as grand in Mayton like you might see in Atlanta, but there's clans enough in the city of 50-odd thousand to put on a food march when they get to feeling to. This one on a Tuesday, the 4th of July, which is today. There's a bunch parading down 3rd Street wearing white robes and pointed hoods. Not a one got their face covered. I hear them first clans after the Civil War hid behind pillowcases and flour sacks to do their mischief. Even blacked enough to play like, oh man, this is rough, to play like they colored. But this clan we got in 1922, not concerned with hiding. All of them, men, women, even little baby clans, down there grinning like picnic on a Sunday, got all kinds of fireworks, sparklers, Chinese crackers, skyrockets, and things that sound like cannons. A brass band competing with that racket, though everybody down there, I swear, clapping on the 1 and the 3, with all the flag waving and cavorting, you might forget they was monsters. But I hunt monsters, and I know them when I see them. One little Ku Klux dead, a voice hums near my ears. 2 little Kluxes dead, 3 little Kluxes, 4 little Kluxes, 5 little Kluxes dead. I glanced at Sadie crouched beside me, hair pulled into a long brown braid dangling off her shoulder. She got one-eye cocked, staring down the sights of her rifle at the crowd below as she finishes her ditty, pretending to pull the trigger. Click, 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 click. Stop that now. I push away the rifle barrel with a beaten-up book. That thing go off and you're liable to make me deaf. Besides, somebody might catch sight of us. Sadie rolls big brown eyes at me, twisting her lips and lobbing a spitty mess of tobacco onto the rooftop. I grimace. Girl got some disgusting habits. I swear, Maurice Boudreaux, she slings her rifle. I swear, Maurice Boudreaux. She slings a rifle across blue overalls too big for her skinny self and puts hands to her hips to give me the full Sadie treatment. Looking like some irate yellow gal sharecropper. The way you always wearing, is you 25 or 85? Sometimes I forget. Ain't nobody seen us up here but birds. She gestures out of buildings rising higher than the telegraph lines of downtown Macon. Way up on one of the old cotton warehouses off Poplar Street. Way back, this whole area housed cotton coming in from the countryside plantations to send down the Ocmulgee by steamboat. That fluffy white, soaked in slave sweat and blood, what made this city. Nowadays, Macon warehouses still hold cotton, but for local factory mills and railroads. Watching these clans shamble down the street, I'm reminded of bales of white, still soaked in colored folks' sweat and blood, moving for the river. Not too sure about that, Chef puts in. She sits with her back against the rooftop wall, dark lips curled around the butt of a Chesterfield in a familiar, easy smirk. Back in the war, we always watched for snipers. Keep one eye on the mud, one in the front, and both up on top. Sergeant used to say somebody yell sniper, and we'd scampered quick. Beneath a narrow, mustard-brown army cap, her eyes tighten, and the smirk wavers. She pulls out the cigarette, exhaling a white stream. Hated effing snipers. Something tells me YouTube won't like that little song. Possibly. Could be. Yeah, I have no idea what this is. I'll admit I'm curious. I'm especially curious about when this was written. But saying YouTube doesn't like something, I don't know. YouTube as a whole gets upset at a lot of things. Wow, I've never heard of this. I can't see the name. Let's see if it comes up. Yep. Nebula, Lotus, and Alex Award winner P. Jelly, I think maybe, Clark returns with Ring Shout, a dark fantasy historical novella that gives a supernatural twist to the Ku Klux Klan's reign of terror. Fantastical, brutal, and thrilling triumph of the imagination. Clark's combination of historical and political reimagining is cathartic, exhilarating, and fresh. Wow, look at that list. In America, demons wear white hoods. So, published dates listed as 2020. I'll admit, it's interesting. Got my attention, definitely. Not the sort of book just anyone could write, either. Yeah, I will probably add this one to my list. It's clearly meant to be, well, it certainly grabs your attention. I'm kind of curious about the author, too. It's someone that, someone I've never heard of, so yeah. Whenever it starts out and just the tone of this one, and I start to read that, I'll admit it makes me a little nervous because I don't know everything that they have on this site. And some things that were written in a former time, probably kind of problematic and not necessarily the sort of thing I would want to read on here. I'm glad I stuck with this one. This should be interesting. Okay. Tell you what, I'm going to make that the last one that I read off of here for tonight. Let me get, I like to end these things by doing one of my own book samples. And so this one's not really, it's nothing like a horror novel, but it starts off kind of with a weird description. So slight content warning. It's, the opening description talks about things like, it mentions a few things that might make some people a little uncomfortable because they're kind of gross, but it's not terrible. No, I know. Just because I was saying certain words out loud in reading that, I'm curious to see if anything in YouTube's algorithm. No, we're not doing that. Remind me later. I'm curious to see if anything in YouTube's algorithm flags it somehow. And because I know that if I had tried to read something like that on TikTok, it absolutely would have been flagged. I don't think it would last. I think they probably would have removed it. But sometimes those are the more important things to read. The things that go straight for the nerve, talk about something uncomfortable, present it in a challenging way, way that grabs your attention. I will be curious to find out eventually what exactly is being said. Like, is it just sort of an indulgent thing, or is it actually, what's it trying to do? I don't know. Looking for a book here. I will be with you in just a moment. So many things in here now. There it is. So this one's really weird. I'll just say that. It's challenging in a different sort of way. This is one that I've read the whole thing, and I really enjoyed the book overall. This gets back, we're going straight back into my sort of like things that really leverage a lot of folklore and sort of old stories in that. But it's told in a very, very different sort of way than a typical story. Get the window capture switched over. Boop. Alright, so this is the opening to a book called Lanny, Lanny. And Lanny is about a little boy who is kind of set apart from the other kids. He's very creative. He's also a little peculiar. He has his own way, and so he gets teased a lot and that sort of thing. But the story doesn't really focus on that. The story focuses on something else going on in the town where he lives. And I'm going to skip this one to see if I can get to something that's a little more suitable for background music. Let's see. Yeah, I may as well read this. It's at the opening. Peace, my stranger, is a tree, growing naturally through all its discomforts, trials, and emergencies of growth. It is green and resolved. It breathes with anguish, yet it releases peace. Peace of mind, growth, movement. It walks this greening sweetness through all the earth, where sky and sun tender its habits, as I would yours. Dead Papa Toothwort waits from his standing nap on an acre wide and scrapes off dream drags of bitumen glistening thick with liquid globs of litter. He lies down to hear hymns of the earth. There are none, so he hums, and then he shrinks, cuts himself a mouth with a rusted ring pole, and sucks up a wet skin of acid-rich mulch and fruity detrivores. He splits and wobbles, divides and reassembles, coughs up a plastic pot and a petrified condom, briefly pauses as a smashed fiberglass bath, stumbles and rips off the mask, feels his face and finds it made of long-buried tannic acid bottles, Victorian rubbish. Tetchy Papa Toothwort should never sleep in the afternoon. He doesn't know who he is. He wants to kill things, so he sings. It sounds slow, nothing like tarmac bubbles popping in a heat wave. His grin takes a sticky hour. Cheering up, he chatters in the voice of a cultured fool to the dry papery wings and underbarked underclings, to the marks he left here last year, to the mice and larks, voles and deer, to the quaint memory of himself, as cyclically reliable as part of the country curriculum. He slips through one grim costume after another as he rustles and trickles and cusses his way between trees. He walks a few paces as an engineer in a Dayglow vest. He takes a step in a dinner suit and then an Anderson shelter, then a tracksuit, then a rusted Jeep bonnet, then a leather skirt. But nothing works. Got a problem here. Give me just a moment. Leather skirt, but nothing works. He pauses as an exhaust pipe, then squirms into the shape of a rabbit snare, then a piston nettle into pink strangled lamb. He plucks a blackbird from the sky and cracks open the yellow beak. He peers into the ripped face as if it were a clean pond. He flings the bird across the forest stage, stands up woodblot bare, bushy, and stamps his spalted feet. His body is a suit of bark armor with initials of long-dead teenage lovers carved in the surface. He clomps through the wood, wide awake and hungry for his listening. Only one thing can cheer up crotchety Toothwort, and that's his listening. He slides across the land precisely at the speed of dusk and arrives at his favorite spot. The village sits up pretty to greet him, sponged in half-light. He climbs into the kissing gate. He is invisible and patient, and about the size of a flea. He sits still. He listens. And that's probably good enough. The rest of it, as you can see here from the little blob of text at the bottom, this isn't something you really want to read on Kindle. Like, if anyone reads this, go get a copy, because there's a bunch of stuff in it that is based on typography, and it just doesn't work very well on Kindle. They have to do these little intermittent pictures, and it just kind of plays weird. So really creative writer. Obviously it reads a lot like poetry. I think he's not like, he writes poetry, but the things that he's published have been novels. He just takes a lot of liberty with his prose and pushes it towards the poetic side very, very hard. So the whole novel reads not quite this intense, not quite this sort of rhythmic and patterned, but he has a very distinctive voice that he carries through the whole novel. And yeah, it was good. It was a good read. Anyway, and with that, I'm going to switch the music back, and we'll get to writing sprints in just a minute here. Yeah, so I like they do doing the horror novels, so I have to say that a couple of those took an odd turn. Let's see, discover, get back there, and back to the mellow music. It was definitely an interesting night in terms of the reading. Oh, hey, how's it going? Welcome. Yeah, tonight was definitely a little bit of an interesting night in terms of the reading. I'm not sure how much you heard, but I use a site called Recommend Me a Book. Let me find that here. I think I still have that open. Yeah. And so it's a really cool site. It basically gives you a book starts. It doesn't tell you the author or the title. And you can read through and see if you liked it. And if you do, you can click on the reveal title and author and see what it is. And if not, you can just click on next. Click on next book and you're off to the next one. Tonight, we selected the horror genre. And boy, did we get a sampling of things. But it also, for whatever reason, it picked 2 nonfiction books tonight, which was a little frustrating. I kind of like to, personally, I'd like to have a fiction-only switch on this thing. Just for what I'm doing. But anyway, it was good. But then, yeah, one of the books was also, let's just say, a little, I think good, but maybe a little tense-making for some folks, too, in terms of the content. But hey, I added it to my reading list, so there you go. Alright, get that up there. Oh hey, thanks for the follow. Oh wow, thanks. Got a flurry of follows there. Cutesy Cat and let's see, Mead's Homebrew. Good things come in pairs. Yeah, they do. No, this has been a lot of fun. Ever since I switched over to the writing and literature sort of format for this, a lot of folks have been stopping by, and it's been great. Really, really enjoy it. I'm checking just a few things as I get ready to transition over to the writing sprints here. Make sure everything's good. Let's see. Let me get my camera going here too. There's that. All right. yeah, I'm gonna take a few minutes in between here. So yeah, for the who for the what? And there go the language skills. Just in time for writing. No, for the folks who just followed, how are you doing this evening? If you write, what kind of things are you working on? I really like hearing about what other folks are working on. But yeah, as you're comfortable, feel free to share, and welcome. Glad to have you here. And actually, let me get a little smoke going here. Not as in a smoke, although occasional pipe, less occasional cigar, not a bad thing. We're just going to do some incense just to kind of, I don't know about you, really helps kind of set the mood. You've been posting to Kindle Vella. I'm unfamiliar with that. What is Kindle Vella? I'm out of the loop. Oh boy, my lighter is dead. Let me do a quick, excuse me, a quick doodle here. Oh, serialized stories. Oh, very cool. Is Vella like all serialized stuff? That's really, really awesome. I've not heard of this. I had no idea. That's cool. Yeah, so boy, I got a frog in my throat here. My work in progress, I'm a little worried it's going to be too might end up being too long for a traditional novels, maybe even for a first novel. Basically, depending on how things go, I'm leaving open the idea of publishing it serially. So good to know about this. I've not read serialized stuff for a long, long time. I'm going to have to spend some time with this, really check it out. Like Wattpad, but by Amazon. So how do you feel about that? Because I know I have mixed feelings about Amazon. You know, I think they've done some pretty cool things. I obviously have a Kindle. But I've also heard stories that they aren't always, the independent author's best friend. So, how have your experiences been? You know, what I'm waiting for in terms of platforms like this, maybe this is a little bit of an out there idea, but I'll risk putting it out there because I think it has potential and I'd love to see someone do it. You know how there's been all this stuff lately about AI image generation? Key aspect of that being feeding AI lots and lots of content and then having it seemingly able to discern something about that content that can be translated into language. Like you can describe a thing and it constructs a picture, right? Good so far, but use buy me a coffee too. Oh, nice. That's very cool. Excuse me. Let's see, buy me a coffee. I'm presuming. I think I've heard of that. I'm presuming it's the same sort of thing as what is the other one? Oh, I can't remember. There are AI story generators too, but they're universally carp at the moment. Yeah. I don't know if that's a typo or avoiding algorithms, but yeah, carp being the worst fish naturally. Nice. Yep. Yeah. what I'd like to see is these kinds of algorithms applied to literary analysis, where it doesn't really try to determine good, bad. It just tries to determine like. The idea being that you could feed it, the Library of Congress, and then some, and a bunch of indie works, and basically have people go on and say, yeah, I like this, and you know what, I especially love this passage, or I love the part when, and basically use the same sort of weird, mushy, it just kind of figures out patterns and stuff. You got where I'm going. And use it as a really good recommendation engine. Like, one of the core problems with indie publishers these days still seems to be like just finding your audience. I don't know about you, but I'm not expecting to ever have a huge audience because of what I write. But I'd love to find those two people, or whoever, however many there are, who actually are kind of into what I might write. But of course, that's really tough. And social media doesn't really do it. You know what I mean? It can work, but it still prefers viral things instead of maximizing matches. Like, think of it this way: you got a bucket and you're trying to fill up all the volume in that bucket. Virality wants you to put big rocks in. Virality is like saying, you're gonna fill that up here. Here's a bunch of really big rocks. Now look at all the space that's in between those rocks. How do you get that? Well, you fill it with something like gravel or sand. I would love an algorithm that found the sand. I would love something that found all the many, many matches between me and not necessarily even just mainstream stuff, but indie writers who are doing stuff that I might love, and basically act as a connection engine between, creatives. I think that would be pretty cool. That's when I see, what they're doing just at a very high level with AI. I'm like, oh, so it doesn't really understand stuff, but it sure as heck knows surprisingly well how to find patterns in things, and it knows how to connect them to language. Why not? Anyway, I think it would be awesome. It sent me a whisper of a story you have on Kindle Vella. Oh, cool. Nice. The first 3 episodes are always free. I can check it out later. Thank you for that. That's awesome. Very, very cool. First hit, always free. Isn't it, though? Yeah. I just saw that there's some my sister is actually commenting on Twitter because in an odd turn of events, I'm also live on Twitter right now. Hey Nikki, how's it going? And it's not showing the comments in my aggregated chat. It's supposed to, but it's not. Good, I'm glad to hear it. So, YS Books, where did you actually send that? I want to make sure I know where to look. Tired right now. Yeah, you and me both. I don't know about you. I was talking about so I did a late stream last night during my writing time. And between that and then just getting ready for bed and everything, I didn't actually get to bed till like 6 this morning. So I literally closed my eyes for like hour and a half or so. Woke up freezing cold because I accidentally left the AC on. Bad me. I am surprisingly alert despite the fact that I did not sleep last night. Oh, my Twitch whisper. Thank you very. You said a whisper, and I'm out of the. I'm a little clueless at times, so I didn't figure out what you meant. Thank you. But then again, I've only used the whispers. I think this will make twice. There it is. Thanks. Awesome. All right. Well, I'm actually, like I said, I'm really looking forward to that. Because of the way I read, I have, like right now, I'm reading Don DeLillo's Underworld, which if you know that book, it's like, about 800 pages and 800 pages of largely plotless prose. Like, I like it. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't read it. It's still, especially for my brain, a little bit of a challenge to read. And so having some smaller things in between, kind of some lighter fare, some hors d'oeuvres, before the big meal in terms of writing, just in terms of purely in terms of size of the work, then that'll be awesome. Cool. All right. Well, I think let's see, what time is it? It's later. Later than I thought it was already. Let's get the writing sprints going. So the way these work, like a lot of people, I do 20-minute sprints. I'll put up a timer. I'll leave the mic on just because that way if I can shout out if I need to. And I don't know, some people like the sound of the keyboard clacking. Although this is not a super fancy keyboard. Like, it's a nice one, but it's not built. It's prefab. And so it doesn't use like custom lube switches or anything. It's not very thocky. But some people like the sound of it, so I'll leave that going. Leave the music going a little bit. And I'm going to write some very frustrating and unsatisfactory prose tonight in chapter 1 of my work in progress. Going back, and I've gone back and rewritten this part many times. I feel like I'm getting closer, but I'm just not finding quite the right thing. I'm not finding the right way to say it. So, writers, hope you happy writing. Nikki, do let me know what's going on. Always eager to hear how things are going for you. And readers, I'm going to take the next 20 minutes and do a reading sprint, which is I had never thought of to do until a very nice guy showed up the other night and talked about how that's what his whole YouTube channel is kind of oriented around. It's like communal study and reading. Just kind of a cool idea. If you are writing something, do feel free to share info about what you're writing in the chat. Same thing if you're, let us know what you're reading. And finally, like folks have done, if you don't mind, whatever platform you happen to watch on, if you do like or subscribe or follow any of those things, then it does let me know that folks like what I'm doing here, and it's greatly appreciated. So take care, and I'm going to start the timer. I will see you in 20 minutes. Okay, and there's 20. Take a little break here. Oh, I absolutely hate everything in writing, but I've done this enough now to realize that this is the necessary first step to get to anything that I remotely like. So, and it's funny, the rational knowledge of that fact does very little to make it easier. I can say it as many times as I want, but the little guy screaming in my brain that this is garbage is way louder than the rational part of my brain. It's like having Kirk and Spock in your brain. Spock with his usual sort of, understated way of saying everything. Rational and logical and a little too quiet to be heard. Everyone remembers the loud one. Everyone remembers Kirk. I don't know if that's the best analogy or metaphor, but it'll do. Tell you what, so I don't lose track. Let me set a little timer here. I want to make sure I take enough time away from this. I don't want to drift too long either. There we go. Yeah, so that website, that Recommend Me a Book. I think I originally heard about that on TikTok. I think may have been the place. No, it was Reddit. It was in a book subreddit. Anyway, I've really enjoyed it. They actually have a really good selection. The downside of it is when you leave it wide open, you don't always know what you're going to get. I mean, you really do get a pretty wide variety of stuff. But for what I'm doing, that works really well. Prior to writing, to me, reading a wide sample of prose styles kind of shakes things loose in my brain a little bit, gives me a little bit more permission to do whatever, Otherwise, my brain gets so rigidly locked into there's only one way to do this and this isn't it sort of thinking. I know that they also have a sort of an advertising program. I haven't talked to anyone who's used it. To my understanding, I think indie authors can also put their works on there, and they will come up alongside all the stuff published by the traditional, publishing houses. I don't know about rates. I don't know about how often the work comes up, but I like the idea. I think it's something that I'll probably check out eventually. And there have been a couple times now when, it's like, yes, I get Hemingway and Stephen King and that sort of thing, but then I have gotten a few indie self-published things on there. I'll say this though, right now, the biggest downside with the things that are less well known is that their referral link doesn't always work. They really, really gotta get that fixed. Just because, it's like if someone reads your stuff and they like it and they click on the link trying to get to it and they're taken to someone else's book, that kind of sucks. But I think it's a one-person sort of a project right now, too. I think in looking up who built it, I think it's kind of a one-guy operation. I don't know how that works. There's as much content as they have on there. Oh, man. Excuse me. Okay. Well, I think I'm going to get started just a little early, mainly because I can feel my battery running low, and it was already kind of low to begin with. So just to make sure I can make the best use of my time here, we'll get to the next sprint. All right, happy writing, happy reading. Oh wow, yeah, that is cool. Thanks for looking into that too. I've been enjoying the reading aspect of it. I haven't gone very deep on the on anything else. So it's one of those sites. I'm kind of waiting for it to get like for them to try to pick up enough readers and stuff that maybe they can then make it attractive for acquisition by, say, Amazon or Amazon slash Goodreads, same company, really, right? It could be kind of a cool idea. Okay. Yeah, I think it's a very clever little idea. I hope it stays around. I hope it takes off. Yeah, no, totally makes sense. I was kind of wondering if, if it like it's just doing a sort of an automated title search. So if the site that he goes to by default doesn't have what you're looking for, it just makes a approximate suggestion, basically. I am a little curious too about the, because of copyright issues and that kind of thing. It seems like it would be. I don't know where that falls. It seems reasonable to expect that sites would be able to show a kind of a small sample of a work, especially if they're linked to trying to sell it. Because somehow we're more forgiving of that than we are of other things. But anyway, I don't know. Seems to be working though. Boy, I can feel my energy. I've only done 2 sprints so far. I'm gonna make it through one more, and then I'm gonna have to call it quits for the night. Only problem you see is if you submit someone else's work, posting 3 to 600 words of someone else's work seems wrong. Right? Yeah, it's a little fishy at least. Like, you would hope they would have a channel for having things removed. Or it'd be nice if it had some more guardrails. If they, just that. They made it so that you had more assurance that what you were looking at was intentional and approved and the whole thing, So something to be careful of too, I guess. At this point, personally, I would still consider using it. But definitely worth digging into. The timer right now is the break timer. Yeah, I need to put some polish on that so that it very clearly says what's going on. Right now it's just numbers. Yeah, I'm. Oh, does it look really small on your screen too? Or you just mean the duration of the break? Duration, yeah. Yeah, it's a soft rule. It's one of those things where, jeez, 5 minutes minimum. And then if there's a good conversation going, I'll do it longer. There's nothing, It's good to stretch a little bit. No hard and fast rules. So, Bobbicus, now you got your outline done. What's your next step? Are you going to step away from it for a day or two? Or are you going to dive right in and start kind of filling in the rest based on your outline? So, random fact, this background that you're seeing here on the typing pad, I'm old, the desk mat, I feel like you need feedback. Oh, okay, but you can definitely start writing with what you got. Cool. Yeah, I like getting little bits of feedback along the way, too. I definitely get energy from them. But I've also found, good or bad, I've had some really good feedback that was more paralyzing to me than the bad feedback. So I have to watch it with that. You're not sure if this is the final ending for realsies. Yeah. Man, this I tell you, the story I'm working on has changed so many times since I started writing notes on it. The idea for the story popped into my head when I was reading Neil Gaiman's Ocean at the End of the Lane. And there's the character of Letty in that book. And man, I love her character, and I love sort of, I don't know, I can't remember what they're called, their family name, but they're obviously just not like normal people. But anyway, great characters. And that was a book that kind of made me think, I think I want to get back into this. I think I want to try my hand at it. And as happens, the idea that that was there on the page isn't really what popped into my head for a story idea. I didn't have a plot or anything. I just had this notion that a sort of light fare. What if it were this idea of a guy who actually really likes being scared, likes horror, not just gore and that kind of thing, but he likes being scared. And what if he met someone who's genuinely, ethereally, or numinously scary? Not scary like this person might hurt me, because that's no fun. See, basically, Sybil is inadvertently convinced by the people around her that pursuing the great change is worth the lives it'll cost. She commits her first act that would be easy to call evil in the name of Mara. Ah, okay. And then consequences of some kind, I'm guessing. Not necessarily. consequences makes it sound like you've made a judgment about the ending already. That's not what I mean to do. I just mean action reaction, right? So she does the thing and then we see the response and then the book ends. Okay, nice cliffhanger-y sort of a thing, huh? Oh, that's very cool. But anyway, yeah, so the story I started working on was going to be, like I said, kind of like lighter fare, maybe sort of like teen, weird kind of fantasy romance. I don't even know what. The first notes I had were talking about the fact, like, okay, what is she? Why is she kind of scary? What does he find out about her? And along the way, I started reading about all kinds of stuff in folklore and different things, and the story changed dramatically. Not really the same book. Some of the same character names. Saturday herself, who is that character, has retained some of her characteristics. She's evolved a lot. And then it was along the way. It's like one of the things about folklore, when we grow up hearing these stories about, other places, but not like remote, like in our imagination, but other places like stories about that spot in the woods up on the hill. They're localized, you know what I mean? And when you're a kid and you're so much more open to not just belief, but a sense of wonder about it too. And then you get older and that sense of wonder kind of, sometimes it fades and sometimes you feel it go away. And there's a kind of this very wistful kind of a sadness that goes along with it. And I wanted to capture some aspect of that. And I'd been thinking about it. And then kind of on a separate track, I started realizing that Saturday, by the end of the story, had to either just disappear. Oh, awesome. Oh, even better. Looking forward to it. Yeah, so I do a thing called Folklore Fridays, where right now I'm reading through a book of Irish folklore. These are really old stories, so they're all well in the public domain. Every time I say that, I'm like, I checked once, but I'm paranoid, and now I have to check again. Yeah, so I'm borrowing from folklore. But anyway, yeah, so I wanted to catch some sense of that loss, that being a sort of I don't know, it's hard to describe, and that's why I'm writing a novel. But anyway, like I said, I knew that Saturday would have to either just disappear or she would pass away. And so we find out in the very first chapter, like I'm not at all, it's not a reveal in the end of the story. The story does not build to some kind of emotional, death scene. We find out in the very first chapter that she passed away fairly young. Folklore mixed with fantasy. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I'm calling mine magical realism. Honestly, if I could just make up a term and have everyone hear it all at once, I would call it folk realism. It's the idea of taking folklore that, like I was describing, things that weren't just stories about, like I love The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. They are squarely in fantasy. One reason of that being is that, like, I don't expect them to be connected. Folk punk, I love it. That's awesome. Oh man. Yeah, and you could do that. That is totally a thing. I mean, you could do stuff with take some of the more modern lore, Slenderman and that kind of thing, and you could absolutely do a folk punk thing. You just invented something. Maybe you already did and I didn't know. But that's a fun word. But anyway, so folk realism is this idea where you write folklore as if it's just as real as everything else. So even the weirder things about it, the things about, whether it's Selkies or what, like creatures from folklore stories that we think of children's fairy tales, but you write them as though they're real. They're very real. And when things are real, a lot of their lives are actually kind of mundane and boring. They're punctuated by the things that make them unique. those things are still in the story, but even they're kind of normalized. It's hard to describe because I want to make it really clear. Like, the idea here is not to make boring something that we're interested in, that we find some sense of wonder in, but just to kind of actually let it live right alongside us, like that place up in the woods on the hill that I described. To recapture some of that sense that we had as kids, that this is a real thing. And rather than thinking like, oh, it's magic and sparkly, we think, is it safe? What is its relation to me? What does it want? What is it like to live alongside it? And so my main character ends up, is, again, you can see from the first chapter, is in a relationship with this person who's kind of from this other place. She has a lot of characteristics from different aspects of folklore from around Europe and other parts of the world. But what she is never given a name. In fact, I intentionally kind of blur the lines in some ways, because that's one of the things. And this is actually, it turns out Ray Bradbury talked about this idea in one story where he's talking about vampires and werewolves. Nah, I don't think so. I think they're just people. I'll stop there. I don't think I could do a better job at this point of describing it, and I'm starting to ramble. So it's set in Georgia. How do I read that last part? Beast. I don't know what that is. Oh, okay. Oh, there we go. Nice. I'm not seeing anything only because I'm not sure how much of the story you expect to be sort of a reveal. So that's in your hands. That's really awesome. I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, to me, the idea is that if these things that we hear about in folklore were really, really real, then they would be a combination of, like, some of the things that we think we know about them would be close to accurate. Most of them would be wrong in some way. They wouldn't be as readily definable or constrained by our own ideas as we would like them to be. Just like when we meet other cultures for the first time, and we have all these preconceptions, and we like to put things in little neat categorical boxes, but that's not how reality works. So what Saturday is she has all these elements of things, and they come up in the story, but they come up in ways that are hopefully, again, kind of grounded in the day-to-day, gotta-get-by sort of existence. So it's described in all first chapter stuff that I try to suggest without saying outright that, like, she's an empath, but she can read people, part of the chapter has to do with the fact that Gabe, the main character, knows that there isn't a lot that he can hide from her. And a lot of the chapter centers on this idea that because she can see deeply into people, and because she can see so deeply into him in particular, he wants to give her the gift of a day. He wants to take a particular day that's really important to him, that he has all these complex emotions and feelings about, and kind of wrap it up in a box and give it to her as a gift. And it goes wrong. And we learn some other things about her. But anyway, yeah, it's there's such a rich vein of things to draw on there. It's funny, as much as I like folklore, I love a lot of the ideas. I've not been as fond of a lot of the modern retellings of them. Because again, a lot of the modern retellings to me tend to lean a lot more towards fairy tale. You know what I mean? They lean so hard into Once Upon a Time and Fairy Wings and that kind of thing that I think don't really acknowledge the deeper roots of those stories, how they affected people's everyday lives, pre-Victorian times. old stories that went back to, pre-Christian Europe and this kind of thing. And stories that have surprising symmetry and similarities all over the world, without always having a lot of explanation as to how those stories that are so similar ended up in such different places at different times, without any obvious signs that there were cultural meetings. So anyway, it's a really fascinating topic. For people who like folklore, actually, I'll recommend, there's a really good podcast by someone who's he's an academic in folklore. So I think he's working on his PhD right now. It's just called the Folklore Podcast. Easy to remember, easy to look up. It's been on for a number of seasons now. He has lots of content from a lot of different areas. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Definitely something to look into. But it treats the topic of folklore as a serious academic topic of study. So the podcast ends up being a mix of slightly more formal things, but then also book reviews and interviews with authors and that sort of thing too. So it's pretty good. Alrighty. Wise Books, thank you for looking up so much stuff and sharing it about recommendmeabook.com. Like I said, I've not really dug into that aspect of it. So that's all good to know. And I agree with you that there's, I'll have to watch and see where they go in terms of where they get their content from, because giving creatives control over their own work is vital. Anything that tries to sacrifice that, especially for someone else's profit, sucks. So we don't want to go there. We don't want to support something that does that. So I looked up and I saw folk punk in the chat logs, and I'm still kind of thinking about what that might look like. I'm going to have to really think about that for a while. I love that term. Fun idea. All right, one more sprint, and then maybe a little bit of chill time, just a teeny bit, and then I'm off for the night. I'm gonna go get some dinner and probably just head to bed. Another big day tomorrow. All right, let me get the timer going. Okay, happy writing, happy reading. Talk to you in 20. Alrighty, that's another 20. So, I tell you, I might try another writing sprint later tonight, but it'll be an offline one if I do. I think it's more likely I'm probably gonna have dinner here and my body's gonna go thanks kindly and knock me unconscious. So, which is probably for the best. I need to get some rest. Thanks to everyone. This is, again, lots of folks stopping by. Thank you. Yeah, you too, again. So, I'll tell you, it feels like I'm making progress. It's still not where I want it to be, but, getting ideas, it's coming together. So, really, man, I'm super eager to have this first chapter done because while I've talked to my wife about the ideas and the story, I'm dying to just share this particular chapter, share the opening chapter, and get her feedback on it. So, sometime soon, I hope. Oh, thanks to everyone for for lending your energy, for being part of the community. Really looking forward to reading your story. I'm gonna scroll up here. I'm terrible with names. Why is books? Really looking forward to reading it. Happy to give you some feedback. I will do that when I can. It's certainly not going to be tonight, but I will get that as high up on my list as I can. And also, because I kind of collect folklore now, thanks again for a new bit of folklore. That's one I've not heard of. I'm looking forward to learning more. Thanks again to Bobicus. Congrats on your outline and happy writing on that. Hope things go really well. And looking for some other people. We had Jamie, as always. Thanks for stopping by. Nikki. Glad to see you. Eager to hear more about what's going on in your life right now. Catch you maybe later this week on another stream, I hope. But yeah, there were some other folks here too. I think at least 3, maybe 4 follows tonight. So thank you for that. And yeah, have a great night. I will see you again, probably, if things go well. I'll be on again tomorrow night. I'm going to try to make this a regular thing as possible. All right, take care. God bless. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.